Welcome to the Road Hunters podcast. This is your go-to source for incredible stories, diverse perspectives, and a deep dive into the world of motorsport. I'm your host, Jonathan Bennett, and joining me on this adventure is also Mr. Andrew. Now, each week, we will bring you exclusive interviews with passionate individuals from all over all different aspects of the racing community. And our goal is to showcase incredible talents, the dedication, and the stories that make motorsport so special to us all. I'm thrilled to be an ambassador for Driven Minds. It's an organisation dedicated to promoting and providing mental health support across the motorsport community. If you ever see any of the Driven Minds lot, or myself included, make sure you come up to us and say hi. And together we're working to break down stigmas and raise awareness and ensure that everyone in the paddock has access to the resources and support they need to both thrive on and off the track. So buckle up, join us on this exciting journey as we explore the incredible world of motorsport, one story at a time. So don't forget to subscribe to the Road Hunters podcast on your favourite platform, the YouTube channel, which also has additional stuff, and follow us on social media for the latest updates and behind the scenes. And this season, I'm personally supported by EBC Brakes and Carbon Positive Motorsport. So now, let's dive into today's episode. Right, we're back after that short hiatus of the crash again. It's happened on my last interview. May have to look at the platform. So you've had this kind of experience, like you say, MX5 the World, as we were talking about beforehand. I love the MX5s. Specifically, I actually want a Mark II though, not a Mark 1. Potentially an unpopular opinion. Everybody always says a Mark 1, and I like the Mark II.
The Mark 1 has pop-up headlights, and that's all it has over the Mark 2, which is a stiffer and better platform. Horses for courses. Exactly. Get what you like. Who cares? Enjoy.
But yeah, cracking cars, I think, the MX5s. But like you say, the amount of... Unfortunately, I think if you take on a Project 1 now, you have to be prepared to deal with potential rusting. And
yes.
I know there is that one.
It's guaranteed.
Guaranteed, yes. I know there is that one group that's selling MX. You can sell your MX5 if you have proof that it's had the sills welded. But even that, I still would be a little bit. I feel like you need to be handy with a welder. But it's the one downside of a fantastic car, and I fully intend to get one soon. So that's kind of your journey going in then to I suppose through motorsport with a lot of track days and kind of getting into that. It's very interesting actually, because what obviously with a lot of people we've interviewed, they started on the track days, or they're kind of they've been driving fast on the road or something like that, and they've gravitated into driving. Whereas you've taken this other approach where the mechanic inside and being involved in the pit, and then now to acquiring Formula G. Whether that went up for sale, and now organising it. So I suppose, first of all, that change from being in the pit and, running a car to organising an event, how was that as a transition? Because that must have been major to go from all of a sudden the organisation and coordination aspects that you had.
Yeah, it's a big shift. When I found out that Formula G was up for sale and the current organisers were stepping down, it sort of started out as a bit of a joke. I'll throw my name in the hat. Why not? What's the worst that can happen? They say no. I've organised a few events before, but never a motorsport event. But I've been around the sport, and I knew I liked it, and I knew I wanted it to continue as it was. As I said, the great thing about Formula G is the paddock vibe, the people, the format's great fun, and it's just a really fun sport to be involved in. And so I chucked my name in the hat. My pitch was that basically I wouldn't really change very much because I really liked it as it was. It didn't need to be, torn apart and switched up, and you don't need to make many changes when it's already a lot of fun. So, to my surprise, they decided to hand the reins to me, and I found myself in some very deep water, with very little knowledge of how to run these events. So the first event we ran was actually American Speedfest at Brands Hatch in 2022. I got some drivers together and we put on a bit of a show with monster trucks.
You've just on your
That
third
was a
year of that
relatively...
then?
Sorry?
You just on your third year of that then, haven't you now? Because that was been, as we're recording,
Yes,
last week.
yeah. Just the last weekend gone. But yeah, that was a nice, gentle introduction to running a motorsport event, dealing with the drivers and working as one big team, and then moving swiftly on to the sort of the first rounds of 2022 at Santapod. It was a very, very pared back setup. We only had a few marshals. We had a decent number of drivers. The format was completely unchanged. I'd rewritten the regulations to make them MSUK compliant, so we could get MSUK accreditation and become an MSUK club, because that gives you certain benefits around sort of being a recognized motorsport outfit, but also helps with things like all the paperwork, the public liability insurance, that kind of thing. They have amazing toolkits for clubs and organizers, and for someone who had no idea what they were doing, that was invaluable. So invaluable. They have, checklists and guidance and, anything that you need help with in terms of running a motorsport club or a motorsport championship, it is available through MSUK. So that was a big aim of mine, was to get their assistance, and they've been a huge support. And so from there it's kind of got slicker, and we've got a really, really great team of volunteers who turn up week in, week out to help run the show. And we're at a point now where everyone's got so much experience now. I really don't need to do very much on the day. I let the other guys run the show and control things, and I just sort of make sure that everything's above board and by the book and safe, and just sort of make some big decisions when it's needed, but largely just let it run now. So massive shout out to the Pink Army, who without them I couldn't do what we do. They're an incredibly supportive group, and thank you from the bottom of my heart for turning up again and again to stand in whatever weather we get thrown to help run the show. So it's been a journey. As I say, I love Formula G, the format, the setup and everything. It's quite grassrootsy, but I would sort of describe it as grassroots plus. So we only hold events at motorsport venues. We only hold events at motorsport venues because they have fire and medical on site, and we have a lot of highly modified cars. We require you to wear a helmet because we have 2 cars on track at a time. We require you to have a fire extinguisher, but otherwise that's pretty much it. So it's a little bit different. We have a professional timing system. It measures to 1,000th of a second. We have races that are determined by pretty much, 100th less time. Sometimes it is that close. And a stopwatch just isn't going to cut it. Unless the timing system breaks, of course, in which case we have no choice. But we haven't had that, touch wood. I wanted to keep it accessible. I didn't want to make it, difficult to get involved with. I didn't want people to feel like they couldn't take part, because, when you see certain sort of types of motorsport, it just looks inaccessible. It might not be, but it looks inaccessible because you see, professional teams, all these professional outfits, these high spec cars, big budget builds. For the average person, and I would count myself amongst them, that doesn't look like something you can take part in. So I wanted to maintain that sort of ease of taking part. And we went to Autosport International in January 2023, and we had a few cars on a stand. And we spoke to a lot of people, and they said, yeah, it sounds really good, but look at these cars you've got here. You've got a 500 horsepower 2JZ swapped S14. You've got a V8 MX5. You've got a Mini with a Subaru Impreza running gear. You've got an S13 that's tuned to the nines and can do, sub 10-second runs on a drag strip. People looked at those cars and thought, how am I going to compete against them in my standard MX-5, in my standard BMW? How am I going to, what's the point in me turning up if I know I'm going to get trounced by these guys? And that evening, we, at the, I can't remember what the complex is called, but the complex next to the NEC, where there's a few restaurants and shops and things, we went for dinner and we sat down and we hashed out a new classing system there and then. And
that's interesting. So that's how that class system came about. Yeah, that's really interesting.
Yeah. So originally we had all-wheel drive, and so originally it was all-wheel drive, two-wheel drive, or rear-wheel drive, and then back in the day there was a front-wheel drive and a kit car class as well. But those have sort of fallen by the wayside. We don't have many all-wheel drive entries, so we've all but scrapped all-wheel drive, and we thought let's split the two-wheel drive category into two different groups. So we looked at power to weight ratios. We looked at, what modifications, should we control tires? What about experience? Should we have a novice category and an experience category? And what we landed on, what we have now is this pro class and street class. And it's very simple. You're in street class if your car has an engine that came with that chassis from factory. So you can do some engine swaps within reason. So you might be able to take a 325 and put a 3 litre in it because it came with a 3 litre from factory in the same chassis. You can take a 1.6 MX5 and put a 1.8 in it because it came with it from factory. There are some nuances that aren't necessarily ideal, but I think you get that with any type of classing system. There are pros and cons of it, but and then we have Pro Class, which is for any car that has an engine that didn't come with the chassis. So it's got a non-standard engine swap, or you can nominate yourself to go into Pro. So you can have a standard engine in Pro, but you just want to compete against these other cars. And that separates out the very serious Gymkhana bespoke builds from people who want to turn up in their relatively standard road-going cars. We still have people competing in street who turn up on trailers, obviously. And we still have people competing in pro who drive to their events on the road. But it works quite well. And we tested it by looking at previous results. So we have a huge database of previous results. And it worked almost perfectly. There were a few little sort of nuances, as I mentioned, but generally it worked pretty well. And so we gave it a trial run for the 2023 season, and we didn't get as many street class entries as we wanted. Weirdly, thinking that the street class would attract more entries, we actually got more pro entries than we got street entries.
Interesting.
Which just goes to show how many people are really, really into modifying their cars and want to have a go. So, but it worked really well. The format worked brilliantly. We had people who had never done any kind of motorsport before turning up in completely stock cars and occasionally getting on a podium. And that's what we wanted. We didn't want people to turn up and get trounced in the first round and go home, 30 minutes after lunch. There's no fun in that. And if you can actually sort of get through a couple of rounds on the knockouts, you might not make it to the final, but you actually feel like you've made some progress and driven well. And it just gives you a bit more seat time, a bit more opportunity
you've gone against someone and you've battled it out. You've got in the qualifying of those stages. It's quite an achievement, no matter what you're
in. Yeah, totally. So it just made it a little bit more fun, and we've had a really good response to splitting two-wheel drive that way. And yeah, hopefully this year we'll have even more street class drivers taking part, in everything from very standard road legal cars to very heavily modified, but still with a standard engine cars. So yeah, exciting times.
Is there so say if you change the intake, you turbo an MX-5, for instance, would that go under pro regs?
Yes. So pro class also encompasses anything that
significant change.
Anything that changes the aspiration, for example. there was one turbo MX-5 model that is a specific engine. They're incredibly rare. I believe it was a Japan only model. There were like 25 made or something. So if you manage to get one of those engines, then yes, it would be.
Did not know that. That's cool.
Technically, but I mean, if you find one,
you're not going to get one.
Find it at the end of a rainbow with a unicorn dancing on top of it. So, yeah, there are little nuances, but yes, if you take a car that only ever came naturally aspirated and slap a massive turbo on it, you automatically go into pro. Cool. You pop a supercharger on it, you pop into pro. So yes, if you change something like that, but a simple K&N filter intake, fancy exhaust, different suspension, bucket seats, harness, cage, stripping the interior, do whatever you want. Do whatever you want. Turn up to your first event with a car that you're familiar with and then start modifying it. We don't stop you from changing it throughout the year. We don't even stop you from changing cars completely. What we do want to avoid is people switching classes halfway through the year, because that messes up the championship tables and makes it really confusing for me. I'm not very good with numbers, so I'd rather you didn't do that. But otherwise, crack on, make changes, make improvements. I don't mind if you want to do that at lunchtime, after practice, and think, oh, actually, I'm going to ditch all of my interior right now. Instead of having a sandwich, I'm going to strip the interior and try and save some weight. Crack on, be my guest. As long as you don't change the engine, you don't change class.
I think that's really good, because you're keeping a affordability and an entry into something that's fun. If you look at the cost of motorsport, so obviously for me, for instance, in Rallycross, I'm in production, so it is the entry level, absolutely entry level. You've still got to have a good few grand budget to be able to run that. And the abuse that the cars are going to take, and potential impacts and panel damage. If you look at circuit racing, you could probably say the C1 class, incredibly popular class. It's popular for a reason. The Sprint series, you're looking at sort of, again, 6 to 8 grand a year, or the endurance C1 championship. But the just to get to that is a lot of money, really, and a lot of people don't necessarily have that. But they have a car that they've had for a few years, they've played with, they've messed about with, and they've seen some cool videos, or they've done auto testing, for instance, and they want to kind of put a bit more, maybe a modified car lover or tuner, or that kind of atmosphere. So I think it gives this really interesting platform where you're taking this very grassroots, but you're adding a not professionalism in some ways, a orchestrated event. I love the fact that you have the 2 lanes, so you have the knockouts. I think that adds that element of, when you've gone through your qualifying times into knockout stage, I think that really adds a really strong competitive nature, and I think that's good for the crowd as well. So it's very interesting. So if you've got somebody coming along, then they wanting to get into it for the first time, obviously you're Motorsport UK registered now, which I think is a really, really good thing. I didn't know that about the organisation, but I think it's just a good thing. So as a sprint and speed event, they will need to apply for the RS Clubman licence. I think that's right, isn't it?
It's RS Clubman, yep. So it's free. It takes about 5 minutes to apply for one of those. You can do that on the RS Clubman website. It's super easy.
Yeah.
You need a driving license.
Handheld. Yes, you will do any MSA UK. You need that. Yeah, the driving license, your road driving license. Bang a handheld fire extinguisher in.
Yep.
And what other kind of things would they need to do to prep then for that? Is there any other bits that they?
A helmet.
You've got to kind of a helmet. Yes, correct. So and even in that way, that entry is very cheap as well to start to play around. So you mentioned of all the different classes now. So you've got some 4-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. Do you have many front-wheel drive cars entering nowadays? I know they used to be the class, didn't they, back in the day?
We don't. I believe we've got someone coming along in a Swift this year.
Okay.
which has, the chap's got some experience auto testing already. I'm always surprised we don't have more front wheel drive cars, actually, because they can be pretty rapid around these courses, not having much weight at the rear. They can really whip round an obstacle very quickly and get out of an obstacle extremely quickly as well. So we used to have, as I say, we used to have a two-wheel drive category, but as tuner culture, I think, has generally tended towards rear-wheel drive performance over two-wheel drive performance, especially in the drifting world. Japanese car culture, people like rear-wheel drive cars, and that has been the preference for Gymkhana over the years. We are seeing a shift. We are seeing some more people starting to be interested in the front-wheel drive cars. We're also seeing a couple of mid-engine cars come in. We haven't had many of those before. And I actually think the mid-engine cars are going to. I think they're going to be difficult to beat. So there are changes, and ultimately people want a cheap, fun car that they don't mind picking up a couple of battle scars on, because sometimes your paint gets rubbed on an obstacle or whatever, things break. You want it to be relatively reasonable. So people are, MX5s are no longer as cheap as they used to be. They're getting expensive and they're getting hard to find without rust. So people are looking for the next cheap toy to play with, and I think some of the front wheel drive options, like the Swift especially, and the Micras, could be really good options. Micras dominate in auto testing; they really do.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Auto testing, also a large amount of front wheel drive cars in auto testing, and in a lot of ways, they've got these 360 elements around the cones. They've got a lot, they're on the handbrake an awful lot. So there's a lot of ways of taking it, and I think the UK as a whole, we are very much front wheel drive. It's not like America where everything's rear wheel drive, or in Japan now there's more front wheel drive. Rear wheel drive cars are generally becoming more expensive. If you got a Japanese 90s car from back in the day, I mean, I sold my R32 GTSD Skyline because it was in the recession, everything, for $2,500. Worst mistake of my life. Again, probably never a video I've ever made where I haven't mentioned that fact. But you can't go and buy one of those things now. It's just not affordable unless you've got the money. Whereas you can go out and you could buy an R53 Mini Cooper S, or a Clio, or like say a Micra, or a Saxo. Like I haven't. My only issue is I have no power steering, and I wonder how difficult that would be on Gymkhana. But maybe I'll give it a try and see.
It's not a heavy car, so maybe it'll be okay. We'll see.
No, it's not. I'm, just get some guns flexing and some shoulders. We'll be up for it.
Work out beforehand.
But yeah, I think that, the UK very much so is coming at I think it became a cat screaming. It's just attention seeking. I think the UK itself very much has, there's a lot of front wheel drive cars out there that can be had cheaply and that can be had for a lot of fun. And there's a lot of available parts and, the lightweight. And I think it will be interesting actually to see some, I think, front wheel drive cars in there. A lot of track day cars could go and potentially, and up on the handbrake and have some fun and spin it out. So maybe I should do it when my car's running again. Why not?
Do it.
I think it sounds like a good idea.
And, and the great thing as well, if you've not done it before and you're worried about turning up and making a fool of yourself, don't worry. Everyone makes a fool of themselves once in a while. And everyone there will want you to do well. I think this is one of the best things about Formula G, is that the drivers are such a friendly bunch. They're always willing to help. It's amazing the number of times a car's broken something and the entire paddock just sort of dives in to try and get this driver back on track. We have people who are gunning for podiums and championship wins, and they're all helping each other. No one wants to win in the paddock, and that's one of my favorite things about the sport. We had a guy DB'd a tire called a 5-minute timeout, which is just a 5-minute break for you to go and fix something between battles so that you can get back out. And it's a very strict 5 minutes. If you're not out within the time limit, you lose. But before the guy had even got to the pits, all the other drivers are there with spare wheels, rattle guns, jacks. The guy pretty much didn't even need to get out of his car, and his wheels were changed and he was back on track.
Epic.
You know, and another chap needed some wheels, and one of his closest competitors gave him a pair. And he's like, yeah, get back out there, you know, go win. He ended up winning. So yeah, it's really nice to know that when you turn up to a Formula G event, everyone there is wanting you to do well. Everyone wants you to have a great time. Everyone wants you to come back. Ultimately, we're like little puppies when we meet new friends, and maybe we're a little overly friendly sometimes. But I always wanted a motorsport championship that isn't scary to take part in.
100%.
You know, sometimes the people are scary, sometimes the format is scary, but you know, if we can sort of take away some of the scary elements and get people having a go, I don't mind if you come once, don't enjoy it, and never come again. But what I do mind is people saying, "Oh, I don't think I can do that," because you absolutely can. You absolutely can in whatever car you want. Even if you drive around the obstacles rather than try and slide the car, and sometimes that's quicker for certain drivers who haven't got as much experience. As long as you're enjoying yourself and having a great time, that's all that matters. And we have people who know that they don't have much of a chance of winning, but they still turn up because they have such a good time.
It's the fun, it's the social element, it's the going out and pushing yourself and improving yourself, doing something different. You know, it's not all about winning as such. It's about the experience of the love of cars and motorsport and passion that we have. And certainly, I think if you're in that with tuner lifestyle, it's kind of, you know, where I come from, and it's one of the issues I struggle with in production is because I can't play around with the car like I want to. But going from say that to super modified is insane. You know, so, you know, that, like you say, you're given a very accessible form of motorsport for people who just love playing with cars. And you know, I think that's cool. So you've got, I think we've already mentioned it, but you've got round 1 and 2 coming up.
July, so
Santa
round
Pod.
1 and 2, 13th and 14th of July, Santa Pod. Entries are live on the website. You have to be a club member to sign up for those events.
£5 or something, I think, isn't it? Yeah,
it's nothing. That cost is literally to cover the cost of running the website, and so we want to make it cheap. In return for your £5, you get eligibility to enter the various events. There are also a few juicy discounts on certain things available to members that you can access through the website.
Yep, you got some really cool partners as well that we've seen. Obviously,
so we've
Carbon Positive Motorsport and what was it? Violent Running, cool set guys.
Yep, big supporters, cool, and we've recently we've brought on Only Skids. So they'll offer club members and drivers decent discounts on fire extinguisher kits, for example, and they're all guaranteed compliant with the Formula G regs, so you know exactly what you're getting is fine. We've got a lovely partner in Lithuania, F4 Fabrication, who can supply fire extinguisher brackets for mounting them in your car, and hopefully by the time this podcast goes live, there'll be a nice juicy discount on Accelera 651s through Tyre Streets as well.
Excellent.
So you can get some reasonably grippy tyres for your Formula G campaign.
Yeah, and they're quite a affordable tyre for the grip that they seem to have as well than the tyre. Tyre.
Even without the discount, they're affordable. And they do 2 treadwear options, 200 and 100. The 100 is very popular. As I said earlier, we don't have any tyre restrictions.
Longer lasting, Nice. Yeah, which that's cool. And it's just little things like that where you're keeping the options open to allow the kind of different, it's not necessarily controlling it. So what days in July is that again?
13th and 14th.
13th and 14th down at Sandspod. And obviously, if anybody just wants to go and watch it, or if you want to go and marshal it, I think you can apply through the website as well.
Yes, if you fancy getting as close to the action as you're ever going to get, marshalling is the best way. You can drop us a note through the website. You can sign up through the website. We do ask that you complete the MSUK Marshals course, which is, again, super useful, super valuable, and makes you eligible to marshal at any MSUK event, and get extra training through them as well. Super useful. But yeah, also Sandspod is a ticketed venue. You can just turn up, buy a ticket, go and watch the drag racing, wander over and watch us as well. Do whatever you want.
Cool. So it's a bit of there's a few things going on. So there's a few things going on as well at the round.
Yeah, nice. Yeah. So yeah, wander over and say hi. Don't be a stranger, even if you are just watching. And I'm sure the drivers would be more than happy to show you around the cars and talk you through the event as well. So.
No, awesome. Thank you very much, John. It's been a pleasure talking to you. It's cool to learn a few more things about Gymkhana and about Formula G. And, I hope it's a good season going ahead. And in fact, I'll tell you what, last comment, what's the future then? Or why do you see the future of Formula G?
Not sure. I don't think we're going to change much. We've tweaked a couple of things for this year, just mostly clarifying the rules and bringing in some clarification around car share, so people can share a drive.
Another way of again cutting the cost and kind of being like, that's really good. Yeah.
So you can come along with a friend. I don't think we're going to change much. It works well. It's nice. We'd obviously like a little bit more backing, but otherwise, we're pretty happy with where we are. We would love more people to come along and try it. Keep the dream alive for future petrol heads everywhere. So yeah, the more people that come along, the better. We do limit the number of entries to 16 for each class. And that sort of makes sure that everyone gets enough seat time, but also gets a chance to go through to the battles because it's top 16. So it's not it's never going to be a huge grid. So yeah, maybe if we get big enough, we could run one round over 2 days, similar to a drift comp. But otherwise,
qualifying then a battle sort of day. Yeah, definitely.
I don't want to ruin the vibe.
No, that's it. And you don't want to make it where the cost, I suppose, is then escalating and increasing. I mean, if you take drifting 15 years ago when I was kind of involved in it, you could have a really competitive car, banging on a set of coilovers, a welded diff and 350, 400 horsepower. Now, bit different. The cars are running 1,000 horsepower and all that. And I think that's it. You want to keep that level that you have, or at least in the class structure like you've started to create. So even if you get in where you, like you say, you run an event over 2 days and it's a, top 32 battles on a Sunday, but you keep in the class structure, so you've got people able to affordably run that and do that. So yes, definitely. And that is the last question. So thank you very much again, John. And we'll have the website and the social media details below. And it's been really interesting, and I look forward to kind of seeing some more of Formula G in the future.
Awesome. We look forward to seeing you compete, JB.
Well, I've said it now, isn't it? Maybe I need to try it. See what non-power steering and a Saxo is like. Until
there is no better place to test your car control and grow your skills. It's incredibly safe. Very slow speed, lots of open space on the venues. So, what better place to give it a crack?
Exactly. And on that note, we'll end that. Thank you very much, John. And we'll see everybody else next week.